Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. This morning we'll be going through some Dhammapada verses for this morning's sutta study. So we'll be looking at verses 174 to 178. So we can begin by paying homage to the Buddha, and then I'll start going through the Dhammapada verses. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So as mentioned, we'll be looking at Dhammapada verses 174 to 178. And I'll go through them in Pali and talk a bit about the meaning of the words. And then at the end, if you have any questions, I'll take any questions you have at the end. So feel free to type in questions at any time. And I'll take them once I've gone through the verses. So starting with verse 174, so in Pali, this says, Anta bhuto ayang loko tane keta vipassati sakuno jalamutova Appo saggaya gacchati. So anda bhutto, anda means blind, bhutta means become. So anda bhutta means become blind. Ayang loko, and loka means world. So he's saying this world has become blind. And he says tanuketa vipassati. Tanuka means few or small or thin. In this case, it means a small number of people or few people. Eta is here, and vipassati means to see clearly, to see with insight. So this is the present tense form of the verb of the word vipassana. So vipassana is a present participle of the verb vipassati. So vipassati means to see clearly or to see insightfully. So tanuketa vipassati means here few people see clearly or few people see wisely. He says, the next line, he says, Sakuno jalamutova. Sakuno means a bird. Jala is a net. So for example, the Brahma Jala Sutta, the Brahma Net Sutta. Jala is net, and mutta means to be liberated or set free or released. So sakuno jalamutova means like a bird set free from a net. And he says, Appo saggaya gacchati. So Appo means few. Saggaya means to heaven, to a heaven world. Gacchati means one goes. So this is the same verb as Buddhang saranang gacchami. So I go to the Buddha for refuge. Gacchati is the same verb. So Appo saggaya gacchati, so few go to heaven. So here the Buddha's painting a somewhat grim picture, but I mean realistic. He's saying this world has become blind. Few here see with wisdom. And few go to heaven like a bird set free from a net. So the Buddha's just being realistic. He's pointing to the fact that not many people are seeing their life with wisdom. Most people are just going through life as a constant pursuit of meaningless goals, of getting more money or having nice relationships or producing a certain amount of children or getting a certain amount of fame or reaching a certain level of status. And people go through their life pursuing insignificant things like this, and then they die. And if one has been pursuing those goals in an unwholesome way, so without a sense of virtue and self-restraint, then one has not been making good karma, and therefore one will not be going to a better world. One will not be going to a happier rebirth. Instead, one will stagnate, or even worse, be reborn in a unpleasant destination, be reborn in a lower realm. Then, so the relatively straightforward verse, so I don't have much to say about 174 here. Then 175, the Buddha says, Hangsa ditchapate yanti, akase yanti idya, ni yanti dira lokamha, jetva marang savahining. So Hangsa ditchapate yanti. So Hangsa means a swan. And the metaphor of the swan appears in a few places in the suttas as a symbol of freedom. And it's sometimes analogized to sometimes to a monk and sometimes to a enlightened being, as being like a swan. So the sense of being free and untrapped, like able to go wherever one wishes without any burden. So Hangsa is swan. Adityapate literally means the path of the sun. So Aditya means the sun and Pata means a path. So Adityapate, literally it means the path of the sun, but it's used poetically to mean the sky. So Hangsa Adityapate Yanti means swans go through the sky. And Akase Yanti Idya. So Idya is from the word Iddhi, which means psychic powers. So Idya means those who have psychic powers. So akase yanti idya means those with psychic powers go through space. So akasa is space. And then ni yanti dira lokamha. Ni yanti means they are led out, or they make their way out. And dira is so the word dira has two main meanings. So one meaning is steady or stable, and the other meaning is wise. So the word dira means it has the connotation both of someone who is wise and also someone who is very tranquil and serene. And lokamha means from the world. So niyanti dira lokamha means those who are wise and serene, leave behind this world. And it says, Jetva marang savahanang. So Jetva means having conquered. Mara, so Mara is Mara, the tempter and deceiver figure that appears in the Buddhist texts. So a deva that occasionally tries to come and convince people to give up their practice or to give in to temptations. And savahanang means with an army. So jetva marang savahinang means having conquered Mara in his army. And so the army of Mara is usually understood to refer to our own defilements. So having conquered Mara and his army means that we have defeated our own defilements. We've overcome our own temptations and delusions. And of course, there's the literal figure of Mara. So there is an actual sentient being who sometimes comes and hassles Buddhist practitioners. But the Buddha also uses Mara and his army as a metaphor to mean our own internal defilements and delusions that keep us circulating around in dukkha. So putting all of this together, verse 175. So it's saying, like swans going through the sky, like those with psychic power going through space. The serene and wise ones leave behind this world, having conquered Mara and his army. So it's analogizing the freedom of mind that comes through Buddhist practice to being like the freedom with which a swan flies through the sky. In verse 176, Ekang dhammang atitasa musavadisa jantuno vitina paralokasa nati papang akariyang. So Ekang dhammang atitasa, so ekang dhammang means one thing. Atitasa means for one who has passed or abandoned or left behind. So for one who has left behind one Dhamma, so one teaching or one thing. And then he says, this is the Musava Desajantuno, so a person who tells lies. So this is the same word that's used in the 5 precepts. So the 4th precept is Musavada Veramani. So refraining from Musavada, from false speech, from telling lies. So he says, so a person who has abandoned one thing, who's left behind one thing, so a person who tells lies. This means someone who's given up the practice of honesty. It says vitina paralokasa. So vitina means to have gone beyond, but in this case it's in the sense of having given up or lost or disregarded. And paraloka, para means other and loka means world. So paraloka usually has the meaning of afterlife. So the life we live after we pass away. So we live in this world right now, but after we pass away, we'll be reborn most likely in another world. So paraloka then is, in the suttas, it generally means the afterlife, or our next life. So vitina paralokasa means one who has neglected the afterlife, one who's not thinking in terms of karma and rebirth, one who's not thinking in terms of the long-term consequences of unwholesome conduct. And it says nati papang akariyang. So nati, there is not, and papang means evil or harmful, and akaryang. So karya means what can be done. So akarya means not done. So nati papang akaryang means there is no evil that is not done or that can't be done. So putting all of this together, then we get there is no evil that cannot be done by one who tells lies and disregards the afterlife. So there's a few places in the sutras where the Buddha puts particular importance on honesty, on the practice of always telling the truth. And of course, he also says that there's a need to know the right time and the right manner in which to communicate something. So just because something is true doesn't necessarily mean we should say it all the time. So we should never say something which is not true, but we should be careful to consider if we're going to say something. So what's the right time, the right place, the right manner in which to say it, so that it's of benefit, so that it's not of harm. And again, one who's neglected the afterlife, this means someone who they're not bothering to think of the long-term consequences of their choices. So if one is only thinking in terms of YOLO, so you only live once, then one can do a tremendous amount of harmful things because you think, well, there's no consequences after death, so I only need to be careful what I do and what consequences might come to me in this life. But actually, the Buddha points out in a few places in the suttas that even if there is no rebirth, then living a virtuous and restrained life tends to bring happiness here and now. And also it makes one blameless. It makes one respected by others, liked by others. So even if there is no rebirth, it would still be worth practicing morality and self-restraint because it makes our life more comfortable and more joyful. But the Buddha says, of course, there is rebirth, and therefore it's important to always consider what are the moral implications of what we're doing? Because it does come back to us in future lives. But if one is not thinking in terms of future lives, then it's very easy to justify making unwholesome choices. So it's always important to keep this in mind. Whenever we make any choice, we should always be thinking, what are the karmic implications of this? If this comes back to me in a future life, am I going to be happy about that or not so happy about that? Then the next verse, so verse 177 says, Nave kadarya deva lokang vajanti, bala have napasang santi danang, dhiro chadanang anumodamano, te neva sohoti sukhi paratta. So here again, the Buddha is talking in terms of morality. So he says, Nave kadarya deva lokang vajanti. So kadarya means one who is stingy. Deva loka is the world of the devas, so the heaven realms. And vajanti means to go to or to access. So na ve kadarya deva lokang vajanti. So he says stingy people who are stingy do not make it to the deva world. So he says stinginess, so this unwillingness to help other people, to give to other people, prevents one from being reborn in the deva worlds, the heaven worlds. And he says, Bala have napasang santi danang. So Bala is fools, and pasang santi means to praise or to commend. So napasang santi, so the fools do not praise, they do not commend dana. So dana literally means giving. It's the practice of generosity, of giving to others, supporting others, helping others. It says, Dhiro chadanang anumodamano. So dhira, as I mentioned earlier, means those who are steadfast and wise. And danang anumodamano. So many people know the word anumodana. So anumodana literally means rejoicing together. And very commonly in Buddhist custom, when somebody does something praiseworthy or virtuous or good, then we say anumodana, which kind of has the similar meaning to saying, I appreciate that, or that's wonderful. The literal meaning is, I rejoice together with you. So it's recognizing that somebody has done something good, and that when somebody does something morally good, then that brings happiness to themselves and others as well. So we say anumodana to indicate that since they're doing something which brings happiness into the world, then we also are happy. We also appreciate that. So dhiro chadanang anumodamano. So this means the wise ones, the steadfast ones, rejoice together with those who are giving. So they recognize the goodness and generosity, and it brings happiness to both the giver and also to the observer of an act of giving. And te neva so hoti sukhi paratta. So te nevas means because of that or based on that. So hoti sukhi paratta. So paratta means, again, in the afterlife or the afterwards. So from the same word para, which means other. So because of this, they're happy in the next life. They're happy in the hereafter. So putting all this together, we get for verse 177, so stingy fools who do not praise giving do not go to the Deva world. But the wise rejoice in giving, and because of that, they are happy hereafter. So again, a reminder of the virtue of giving, and also rejoicing in the generosity of others. So not just in one's own giving, but also in the acts of giving that other people do. We should always praise and delight in the generosity of others as well. And here again, the Buddha is constantly reminding us to think in terms of karma and rebirth. Then finally, verse 178, so this will be the last verse for today. So it says, Patabhya ekarajena saggasagamane va sabaloka dipachena sotapatti palang varang. So Patabhya ekarajena. So Patabhya means the earth. And Eka Rajena. So Eka means one, and Raja means to be a king, to be a ruler, a monarch. So Eka Rajena means as the sole monarch, the only ruler. So he says Patabhya Eka Rajena means as the sole ruler of the world. And Saggasagamanenava says, or going to heaven. Sabaloka dipachena. So Sabba Loka means the whole world. And Adipacha means to dominate or control. So Sabaloka dipachena means dominating or controlling the whole world. And Sotapatti palang varang. So Sotapatti is the stream entry, so the first stage of awakening. Pala means the fruit or the benefit. So Sotapatti palang means the benefit or the fruit or the result of stream entry, of attaining the first stage of awakening. And varang means the best or the most excellent. So putting it all together, he's saying compared to being the sole ruler of the earth or going to heaven or dominating the whole world, even better is attaining stream entry. So all the ordinary worldly goals that we have, and often our worldly goals are actually quite modest. We want a promotion at work, or we want to get published in a newspaper, or we want to, actually nobody really reads newspapers anymore. I guess that's kind of a dated metaphor. Or we want to have recognition for something, or we want to acquire a certain amount of wealth or get a certain kind of property or whatever it is. Actually, we tend to have quite modest goals. So the Buddha here he's talking about much higher goals, like being the sole monarch of the entire earth, or going to a heaven world, which even the lowest of the devas are still far happier than the happiest humans, or dominating the whole world. So again, like very megalomaniacal goals. It says even compared to these megalomaniacal goals, it's still far better to attain stream entry. One of the imageries that the Buddha uses in the suttas to talk about stream entry is, he says, if there was a person who, in the morning, so they're captured by the king, and the king ties them to a post, and in the morning he says, go and stab that person with a spear 100 times. And they go and stab him 100 times. And the king says, how's that person doing? They're like, oh, he's still alive. And the king says, okay, well, at noon, go and stab him with 100 spears. And so again, they go and stab him 100 times. And the king says, how's he doing? They're like, oh, he's still alive. So in the evening, the king says, well, go and stab him another 100 times. And they go and stab him another 100 times. And how's that guy? Well, he's still alive. And the Buddha says, if this went on for 100 years, and you were guaranteed that after that 100 years you would attain stream entry, then it would be worth it. So getting stabbed 300 times every day for 100 years, if you could get stream entry at the end, then that's a good bargain. That's a good deal. So really emphasizing the importance and value of stream entry as being the highest and most worthwhile goal for an unawakened being. So far more valuable than again, petty things like getting a promotion or having 2.5 children or whatever it is people want. I don't even know. Compared to any of that, but even compared to dominating the entire world, it's far better to dominate your own mind, control your own mind, and attain awakening. So that's the last of the verses for this morning. So we can respect the suttas with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And at this time, if there's any questions, I can take questions. So hello to all the friends who are checking in online. So hello to Gita, Manal, Jeff, Vivian, Bhumika, Metta, Niranjan, Douglas, Vovan, CK, Jayanta, other Gita, Sujon, Jay, Rick, Ronald, Yankee, Soar, Pamela, John, Elaine, Steve, and Ja. So welcome to all of you. And I don't see any questions. So it might be that there's no questions today. So relatively straightforward Dhammapada verses this morning. So with that in mind, we'll look forward to seeing you again this evening for another Dhamma sharing session. And we'll see you next time.